Summer Wednesday morning here on Birds 365 with Mac, and Mike. Mike Gill, our bud from down the shore at 97.3 ESPN, the host of the Sports Bash. Good enough to jump in. All right, first things first, T-shirt identification. What are we donning today, Mr. Gill?
You know, I've been trying to make sure I have a different shirt on every single time. So today,
you got to be running. At some point, we're going to run out. I get that.
All right. Yeah.
What do you got?
Princeton Tigers. Yeah, like it.
Back to the get around to a lot of campuses, Gill. I got to give you props for that.
Well, you think I'm running out, baby? I'm just starting.
Yeah. It's not like he's at It's not like he's at UCLA. He's down the street at Princeton. Come on, Joe.
I've traveled.
You got a Princeton T-shirt, Johnny Mac?
Yeah, right.
No.
Well, listen,
neither do I.
I did play-by-play. I did play-by-play, and I traveled a lot when I was on the road doing play-by-play. So a lot of college campuses during my time, and now some of the T-shirts I didn't buy at the time I was on the campus. Some of them I bought after the fact. Hey, I've been to Princeton. Hey, I've been to these places.
You don't have to cop to that. You don't have to admit that. We'll believe you bought everything in the school.
Jody, if I bought T-shirts when I actually was on the campus, I'd have none that fit me.
That fit, yeah. I kind of figured that.
Yeah, I've done that, Mike, because I'm one of, and my wife hates this, by the way, but I'm one of those people that now buys a refrigerator magnet from every city I've gone to. Well, when I started traveling early in my career, I didn't do it. So there are ones that I have to get, that I have to back order that I've already been to, but I wasn't doing it at the time.
Yeah, see, we do the beer koozie from every place we've been to. We have a koozie from the different campuses and cities that we've been to.
Now, where do you keep those? Do you have
shelf
in the garage or
no? There's a good spot. You know that bottom drawer, the third one on the bottom. You dump them all in the bottom drawer. No, you just put them all in the drawer.
See, that's why you got to go magnet, because you can see them. And I got the outside refrigerator.
Well, you got to keep in mind, Johnny Mac, I live at the beach. We go to the beach. We pull out a bunch of koozies. We put them in the cooler and bring them down.
Koozies are getting used for
all right.
Down the shore.
All right.
I believe that. All right. Let's talk about the use of some Eagle players. From all reports, Jalen Hurts has been nothing short of spectacular in his repeat performance from last year's runner-up for MVP in the National Football League. Can Jalen Hurts actually be better than he was last year? He made the biggest jump from one year to another, second year to the third year, that I've ever seen in the history of the National Football League. Now we ask him to jump up again. Could he actually be better than he was last year, Mike Gill?
I've been in the camp that says I think he can, and I'm not surprised that he does take a step forward. Look, we forget how young this guy is. I think I was talking to John on my show yesterday about, I used the word mature, and it's almost like an insult because he is so mature. But you got to figure he's continuing to mature not only as a person, but as a player. And this is a guy who worked his ass off to get from an average quarterback to second in the MVP. You think he's just going to rest on his laurels and say, hey, I achieved my goal, I'm stopping there? No, this is a guy who probably continued to work to continue to get better and better and better. And it's not like a guy who's 32 years old who has been working his way to this point. He's still at a point where many young quarterbacks, even the Burrows and the Herberts and the Mahomes, guys that some people perceive are better than him, those guys continue to get better even at their young age. So why wouldn't Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, and I asked Brian Johnson about that, because Jalen really takes more pride, I think. Everybody knows he's got the tremendous athleticism, but when he calls himself a triple threat, I think he takes more pride in being able to beat people with his mind, so to speak, with his reading defenses, with his processing skills. And he's getting better and better at that. And that's where the improvement comes in. And that's what Brian said. I mean, it's common sense in a lot of ways, in that the more you do something, the more comfortable you get, the better you get at it. And he's getting more comfortable processing, understanding where the football's supposed to go. And I just mentioned it with Jody. I mentioned it with you yesterday. the ball's not hitting the ground when the first team is out there. Maybe 4 incompletions over 2 full practices. I don't think you get to the full hand. And that's because he's making quick decisions. He's making the right decisions. He's going to open receivers, and he's making plays. And the other stuff is already there. So, yeah, why not?
Just say, add into the fact that even if he, incrementally doesn't improve himself, the guys around him are going to continue to make him a pretty darn good, it's the McNabb thing. When you have Pinkston and Thrash, you can only do so much. You give him Terrell Owens, and the guy became an MVP candidate all of a sudden. We always look back at McNabb's career and kind of wonder, what if he had a TO every single year? Well, that's what Hurts has. He's got a TO and more.
Well, that to me, Mike, is the hard part, because, he might be a better quarterback, but might not be as good statistically. And will people recognize that? I don't know. Will the Eagles recognize it? Yeah. If he gets better, but if AJ gets hurt, or, you have some significant offensive line issues, you have a tougher schedule, just as bare bones as that, it's conceivable he's a better player, but the numbers were so outrageous last year, they might not be quite as good. But, that's a more esoteric discussion, as they say. Yeah. And that's not a bad thing, by the way.
Well, it's the same with the team. I mean, the team might be a better outfit at the end, but their record might not suggest that they were better than the team before, based on schedule and different things to that ilk. But who knows? You could be a 12-5 team and be better than the 14-3 team from a year ago.
Oh, yeah.
As John laid out, the ball is not hitting the ground much when Jalen Hurts is out there on the field. And that's a good thing, because if Brett Toth were out there on the field, the ball might actually be hitting the ground, because he's having some trouble with the snapping for the second team unit. So he's getting all his snaps in ahead of time. Good for Jalen on that. Here's the question I have about the Eagles' overall offense. And John and I talked about this in a segment before we punched you up, Mike. How do you balance between being different, giving teams different looks, not being static, but also not getting away from one of the best offensive years the Eagles have ever had as an organization? That sometimes can be a tricky balancing act, because you don't want to stay the same, but if you choose to go elsewhere and do make some changes and they don't work, you go, well, why the hell did you change anything? It wasn't broke. Do you think the new offensive coordinator is the guy to be trying to walk that balancing line?
Well, he said some things yesterday that I thought were interesting. Brian Johnson, a lot of people talk about Swift catching the ball, and we've discussed a lot when I've been on with you guys is, they don't use the running back much because they've got multiple other progressions before they get to the running back. And by the time they get to the running back, Hurts generally just takes off.
Yep.
But what if they have a back that they do value enough that they manufacture touches for him? In other words, they call the play that he is the first.
Johnny hates the manufactured touches. You don't want to go there, Mike Gill.
The thing that he said yesterday, he was asked 2 questions about. They didn't bring up Swift by name. They just said the running backs. They say, hey, you threw the ball to running backs a lot at Florida was one of the questions. And the previous question was, hey, what about throwing the ball to the backs? And his thing was, look, if we have a matchup that we want to exploit. So to your question, Jody, I thought about this yesterday is, sometimes it's matchup based. If you look at a team and you're saying, hey, they're going to they got good corners this week. Their linebackers don't cover backs out of the backfield that well. This is a week where we can manufacture touches. So it might not be where they do it every single week, but if there's a team that just says, hey, or matches up with you well in certain areas, to see if this offensive coordinator will say, hey, you got that? We're going to do this. Let's see how you match up with that. And that could be something that materializes over the season. But most times when you're looking at a matchup and you're saying who's got the check mark, the Eagles wide receivers or the other team's secondary, there's going to be very few secondaries that win that check mark.
Yeah. To clarify my manufactured touch position, I don't like, Jody, when teams build offenses around manufactured touch players because the coaches don't have enough discipline to keep going back to it. As a curveball, yeah. As I said, if you're going to run that stupid bubble screen, I'd rather run it with DeAndre Swift than Quez Watkins, because DeAndre is going to be able to break that first tackle and is going to be able to do things in space. And I don't mind that as a curveball. Now, if you're trying to build an offense around that nonsense, yeah, I don't like that.
Whoever built an offense around?
Oh, you kidding me? There's again, Kyle does it well. So, but you know, I've been around so many players. You know, I love Cordero Patterson. I was around Percy Harvin, who was a phenomenal player. But how do you get him the damn football consistently? You got to be able to run routes as a receiver. You want the guys. You want the AJ Browns, the Devontae Smiths, the Stephon Diggs, the Justin Jeffersons, the Devontae Adams. Guys who can get open in traditional ways are the guys you build offenses around. Percy Harvin is as talented as every single one of those guys, but he couldn't run routes, so you had to figure out ways to get him the football. And for anybody who doesn't remember Percy, go look up some highlights on Percy Harvin. Just an unbelievable talent. But you can't build an offense around him, but you get him and you go, we got to build an offense around this guy. You can't. That's my problem. And maybe Kyle can, because he's done it to a certain degree with Deebo Samuel. But other than that, there's very few people that have the discipline to keep going back to it again and again and again. Whereas you just call a route to AJ Brown, what's his Twitter handle? Always open. Always open. That's easy. The other stuff, that's difficult. And that's why I don't like it. So I just wanted to clarify that position. But as a curveball, yeah, knock yourself out. It helps, and that's what the Eagles need, because they got a great fastball. The Eagles got the great fastball with AJ, Devontae, Dallas Goedert, and they got to get the football. They got to get the football, and I don't know why everybody's obsessed, Mike, with getting other people the football. Like, with all due respect to Quez and DeAndre, you'll get the scraps. Yeah, I gotta get the football to these guys.
I do feel there is that avenue of the fan who watched Swift carve you up in week number 1, and that memory sticks of, this guy's really good. Well, if you went back and watched him in week 2, 3, 4, he missed a couple of weeks with an ankle and a shoulder injury. He didn't have that same week against anybody else. He had in fact, the game against Philadelphia was the only game he had over 100 yards rushing the entire season. So yeah, he had a really good game against the Eagles, and I think a lot of fans remember that breakout performance. He said, "Wow, we got this guy. You got to give him the ball more." Whereas Detroit, I think by the end of the year, he had kind of fallen down their depth chart a little bit. So I think that does play a factor as why we envision certain guys being a bigger part of the offense than maybe the team will envision. And I stand on, if Penny is healthy, he's the most talented of the backs by far. And that if you're putting them now, John, you're there. If you put those 5 guys on the field next to each other and all say, hey, run the same play, I'm going to hand you the ball. I would have to imagine if you're coaching that team, you're saying, this guy Penny looks a heck of a lot better than with the other guys I got, if healthy.
Yeah, he's the most talented runner. I think the Eagles are enamored by, I don't think he's the most well-rounded. I think DeAndre is the most well-rounded, and I think they're enamored by that. But yeah, as far as just running the football, yeah, we've already seen Rashad do it. I mean, Rashad's a high-level runner in this league, but can you trust him? Is he going to stay healthy? If he does, yeah, I mean, I'm not comparing any of those other backs to Rashad Penny as a runner. I don't know how you could.
As John points out, when you have A.J. Brown, who got 145 targets last year, and Devontae Smith, who got 136 targets last year, only leaves so many targets left to be divvied up between everybody else. And oh, by the way, they've got their elite third wide receiver in Quez Watkins. So I don't know how they're going to have the ball available to give to Swift or Goddard with the amount of ball sharing that they have to do this year. But here's the one thing I know: if anybody will do it right, it'd be Jalen Hurts, because he is that smart. He looks like he's even better than he was last year, which is tough to believe, but we'll see it once the season starts. All right, other side of the football, Mike Gill. The other guy who was a little talkative yesterday was their star defensive end, Hassan Reddick, who had 19 and a half sacks last year. He wants to make sure everybody knows that he had 19 and a half sacks this year and acknowledges that he had 19 and a half sacks last year, and that he's allowed to use the word elite. I think Quez kind of stretched the imagination yesterday. Oh, Hassan Reddick's allowed to say elite because he was one of the elite defensive players in the league. But then the conversation turned to how much he's being paid. And a couple of those other elite defenders, such as Jones in Kansas City and Bosa with San Francisco, are actually holding out right now because they don't like the fact that the defensive end high-end salary market has jumped and they're not there yet. Well, you sure as hell could say the same about Hassan Reddick, and it was broached yesterday in the conversation that he had. He said, yeah, you guys can see where I'm at. Both play level and salary. So he did say it'll work itself out, but I'm sure that the guys who were holding out thought the same exact thing, and hasn't worked out.
By the way, Jody, that was Groats stirring the pot with the contract. But he's right.
Was it Groats who asked the follow-up question?
That was my first question.
Yeah.
Who asked that question to even bring this up? Why I haven't heard anything about this. And then yesterday, it's like somebody asked.
Bob's right though, because he's
not saying he's. I'm not saying that it's not. It's a good question. I'm not knocking the question, but it doesn't seem it was something that needed. It wasn't brought up at all until
no. Hold on. I actually saw the tape of that entire interview to defend my friend, the Prince of Darkness, Bob Groats. Hassan Reddick brought up the conversation of money. The first question was, how do you motivate yourself? How do you define yourself? And he said some other players define themselves by the paycheck that they get. He brought up money first. The question wasn't about, hey, Hassan, how badly underpaid are you? That wasn't a reporter stirring the pot that was just looking to get some angst going. No. Unasked, Hassan Reddick went to the salaries of the other players, then rightfully so, Groats went with the follow-up. Yeah. Well, then are you underpaid? Do you see yourself as underpaid? Which is the obvious and accurate follow-up question. So I tip my cap to Bob Groats.
Oh, in that instance, fine. If he brings it up and then you follow up, well, are you suggesting you're underpaid? Sure.
Exactly the way it went down.
Yeah. Look, Reddick's not wrong. I mean, he
outplayed his contract.
He had double-digit sacks in Arizona. He had double-digit sacks in Carolina, then came here and had double-digit sacks. We talk about this a lot. People don't like to hear it. You know, John Gannon got more sacks out of Reddick than anybody else was able to get out of the guy, significantly more. So he outplayed his contract here. He signed a contract based on what he did in the two previous stops, and he was better here. Now, if he follows it up, you know, with another year like that, I think there would probably say, hey, we might have to think about this. But I don't like when somebody has 1 year of outperforming. That's why the Hurts contract came at such a weird time, but he was at a time where you were kind of stuck and you had to do something because he only has shown for 1 year. Now, I'm not suggesting I think that there was a fluke of a year, but you got to give me a bigger sample size before we then say, well, you do.
I don't know, man. If I were Hassan's agent, I'd be in there knocking on the door. I'd be in. I just go back to the Chiefs and Tyreek Hill. If you remember what went on there, the Chiefs had a deal with Tyreek Hill. They had a deal done. They were waiting to announce it for whatever reason. And then Devontae Adams comes in and swoops in and they trade and he gets his deal. And Tyreek's like, whoa. And all of a sudden he wants, more money than Kansas City can go. And he's traded and things go in a different direction. The Chiefs were able, obviously, to persevere. And Hassan explained this pretty succinctly. For whatever reason, like you're saying, now he had a career year. You're right there, Mike. But he was really good his last year in Arizona. And he was really good his 1 year in Carolina. And he was even underpaid when the Eagles signed him originally.
Well, then that's his fault.
But, well, he had a weird sort of disconnect because people thought he was a bust because Arizona, the first 3 years of his career, played him at off-ball linebacker like a bunch of idiots. And he was a bust for the first 3 years of his career. And then basically out of desperation, they had him for one more year. They said, all right, let's let this guy pin his ear back to go get the quarterback. And whoa, voila. He's used correctly, he turns into a great player. And he mentioned people still have that thought of those first 3 years in Arizona when he was essentially playing out of position. That's where I yelled at fans saying, oh, play Nolan Smith at off-ball linebacker. No, do not play Nolan Smith at off-ball linebacker. Let him do what he does and eventually develop into a great pass rusher. And for whatever reason that sticks in people's minds, and I'm not even talking about fans, I'm talking about NFL executives, and they're like, what you kind of just said, Mike. Well, he's got to prove himself more. Why? There's only, I think Nick Bosa is the only guy who's got more sacks than Hassan Reddick over the last 3 seasons.
I only say that based on the contract that he agreed on when he signed here. He must have thought that value was the right value to sign the deal. So now you've outperformed what you signed for based on what you did in Carolina and probably to some extent Arizona. So you signed for that number. Well, then you got to Philadelphia and outperformed those 2 years. That's what I'm saying. If you follow up the year that you had in Philly again, okay, now you have a gripe to say, I've outperformed the deal that I signed based on what I did in Arizona and Carolina. I think I should get paid more money. I wouldn't have a problem with that, but that's what I'm saying.
By the way, and Howie's very savvy because that's one of the reasons why Nolan Smith is here, to be honest. I mean, they know this is coming, whether it's this year, next year, they know it's coming.
Right.
And the numbers for edge rushers, Danielle Hunter just got the ability to make 20 million. And Hassan's sitting there at 15. And remember, it's less because, he got the money up front with the guarantees. This could develop into something.
Yeah, he's 28 years old, too. So it's not like you're talking about a guy who's crossed that 30-year-old threshold that the Eagles, in the past have been known to cut ties when you hit that 30. He still does have two more playing seasons under that 30-year-old age.
Yeah, they might have to tweak it. It'll be interesting. They certainly would.
If he has another year like he had last year, I mean, look, 18.5 sacks is a tremendous year. If he has another year like that, then yeah, you're well deserving. And he's not wrong. I think he's right. I think he's top 5 sacks in the league since that Arizona season that people don't even recognize that. This guy's been a premier pass rusher, but he took it to another level last year.
The question is to extend or not to extend, and the question that comes off that is when. And I don't think Hassan purposefully did that. I think he was just talking off the top of his head, and then rightfully so. There was a follow-up question that now makes it an issue. I don't think it's going to be an issue. I don't think his agent goes bashing into Howie Roseman's office today and says, oh, yeah? If you and I aren't talking, my guy's not practicing. I don't think he's going to pull him off the field the way that Jones is in Kansas City or Bosa is in San Francisco. But the conversations can be ongoing. Howie's been known. He didn't do any of it last year. And I know I kind of questioned it, and it worked out fine because they went to the Super Bowl. But Howie has always been a guy to be ahead of the curve and get the negotiations in ahead of time. Try and get an extension done ahead of time. He didn't do any of that last year, and they let a whole bunch of guys walk away because of it. Do you think this is going to be an extension off year for the Eagles? Will they do one or two with guys? And it can level from Hassan Reddick, Defensive Player of the Year conversation, to a backup offensive lineman. You think how he does in-season extensions this year for the Birds?
We were talking about the long-term group that they have currently here, the Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Jason, Kelsey, and Lane Johnson. That group you don't see on teams where the four guys have stayed together. So who will they prioritize as that next group of guys? And you probably have to start thinking about that now as those guys get ready to walk out the door. You probably are going to start kind of identifying who are the next group of guys that you would want to stay here. And so, yeah, Jody, I think you start to look at those guys. Who is that group of guys that you say, all right, we want to make sure that these guys, we don't have any of these issues where they're free agents, and we want to identify them. So I guess
remember, it's the 2020 draft, guys. So,
right,
that's the Rager draft and the Hurts draft. Obviously, Rager's not relevant to this discussion anymore. Hurts has already been extended. Then you talk about Davion Taylor. No. Kayvon Wallace, I just mentioned, he's becoming a bigger deal. Maybe you can get something cheap done with him. Jack Driscoll, maybe something cheap done. Sean Bradley, Quez Watkins.
Right.
Those are the guys.
That was my point.
So you're not talking about Mailata, Sweat, Goddard, Maddox.
The guys who would be up for that, they are not really guys that you're going to target. So I guess the question would be, are you going to go to the next group earlier and say, hey, let's talk about doing, because you're going to get Smith soon, Dickerson soon. You're going to have to
you can't. I mean, you can't get extensions done till after that third year. So they're not, that's not pressing.
Well, let me put one guy in the hopper. The elite third wide receiver the Eagles have, Quez Watkins. Are you looking to extend a guy like Quez, seeing as he's reached elite status?
Yeah, well, because Quez self-defines himself as elite, doesn't mean how he has lost his mind. Quez has got a lot to prove. But he knows, hey, maybe that helps Quez Watkins because he knows he's on a contract year. And
he's also not a guy that you would look at as identifying as someone that is a core player that here 10 years from now. You're looking back and say, I mean, those guys would be, and again, they're not there yet. It would be Dickerson and Smith would be the first two guys that you say,
that's going to be difficult. Those guys,
right? Yeah. You want to make sure that those two guys are locked in, and hopefully 10 years from now, Landon Dickerson still playing left guard at a very high level, similar to what you got from Jason Kelsey as your center for the run that you got from him, and Lane Johnson as your right tackle. You've already identified Mailata, so yeah, you're kind of out of guys this particular season to pick, but it would be it'd be kind of interesting to see if they do identify people this offseason.
But, there's no, if Jack Truss was going to be a long-term sixth man, that makes some sense.
Sure.
Try to get him done as early as possible. So there could be, but not big ones. But the Eagles have proven, look, the one guy, Hurts, they got done. They got Mailata done. They got Sweat done. They got Goddard done. They got Maddox done. They'll get Smith done and Dickerson done when the time is right and when they can. They've done a very good job of identifying those players you're talking about, Mike, and getting deals.
And all those guys were all drafted by the team, whereas the Reddicks of the world, they were brought in here as free agents. So their money up front, or when they originally got here, was a lot more significant than those other guys.
So you don't think if Reddick's agent came knocking on Howie's door, Howie's message would be, get back to me in 12 months, that he wouldn't have a conversation with
you? Mean if he knocked on the door today?
Yeah.
I would imagine he'd be told, come back to me in 12 months.
Okay. All right. Just double check.
See, the problem with that is then you
start. He might say it not as direct.
Now, Jody, that's easy to say, but as Jody pointed out some of the names, if the player is upset and the player starts to, whether it's holding in like Hunter or holding out like Bosa, which doesn't make sense from a financial standpoint, but the hold in is the better way to go. If the player's upset, then issues arise. So, I mean, there's a real world human effect here. And Hassan's whole life basically is built on having a chip on his shoulder because he thinks he's underappreciated. and he is, and he thinks he's underrated, and he is, and he gave that. This guy was 4th in the Defensive Player of the Year voting. As you mentioned, he had 19 and a half sacks, and he gave that great quote. Basically, if you don't think I'm good, basically, you don't know ball. He's got a big chip on his shoulder, big chip. And that could turn negative if he thinks he's being disrespected.
Yeah. Listen, I have a lot in common with Mr. Reddick. Believe me, we think very similarly here. He showed up. Did he bring it up to try to get it out there just to let them know, only to walk away in the middle of it? I don't see that happening. I mean, I think if he would have done something, if he was so angry, he just would have done something similar to the other guys, not shown up at all.
Look, I think Hassan's from Philly. I think he loves it here. He loves the situation. I'm not trying to create controversy. What I'm saying is, in that scenario you guys were mentioning, if Howie Howie's too savvy for this. If Howie hangs up the phone, call me in 12 months, then you're antagonizing.
Well, that's right. He would say it a little differently.
Yeah. You're antagonizing the situation. I'm sure he's already had conversations. I'm sure he's already
What was the deal that he signed? I remember it being a deal that I was
345, 15 million per.
Yeah.
Right. So his last year,
he's already off the year he had. He's now a very team-friendly contract. In 1 year, he made for what seemed to be a fair contract into a team-friendly contract with the unbelievable season he had last year.
Yes, I would say
Hunter's the last one. Hunter's the last one to sign, and he's been a very good player for a long time. And he got 17 million with the ability to make 20 million. And he wasn't Hassan Reddick last year. So, and I think he's 10th on the edge rusher list. So, yeah, Hassan's underpaid by any measure. How it unfolds, I can't tell you. Yeah, but he's definitely underpaid.
What week is the bye week for the Eagles? Like
10.
They get 8 in,
10,
or 9.
10.
Week 10, so they get 9. So that's just slightly more than half a season. He's got 10 sacks by the time they get to the bye week, and I'm his agent. Oh, yeah, I'm putting some on the books to
Jody,
and go face to face with Howie Roseman.
Jody, after the question that you posed and saying, hey, will they find someone? There's not a lot of options in season, so the timing might work out for him.
As far as an extension goes.
Right, where he might not say, get back to me in 12 months. He might say, listen, we acknowledge this. We really like Hassan being a part of the organization. Let us just kind of get the season off the ground, and maybe we reconvene, somewhere around, week 9 and see, before. So that's something like talking it through it. They, that's something they like to do. They like to identify players. They don't have anybody really from the 2020 class that is of big time importance. You have some depth guys that you might like to keep around, but you don't have that one guy where you're like, this.
Well, you had that one.
You had Hurts, right? You had Hurts, right?
You got Hurts done. That one's in the rearview mirror. Let me throw one more in the mix, and I fear I already know the answer, but maybe I'm reaching here to try and get a different answer. If one of the 2 free agent backs that they brought in this year, Swift or Penny, goes off in the first half of the season and is just killing it, however you want to define killing it statistically, would the Eagles actually think about getting a contract extension with either of those 2 guys?
They're gone. They're gone. That's the quickest path. If they play well, they're gone. The Eagles aren't paying, Ronnie. But how many times they got to prove it? They ain't paying. They ain't paying for a run.
No, but here, let me ask you this question: would all 5 of these guys have a shot to make the roster?
Yeah. In many ways, I don't think that's
so.
helpful.
I don't think there's a prayer they carry 5 right
No,
now.
I don't think they're going to carry 5. Correct me if I'm wrong. You said all 5 guys have a chance to make the roster. I think all 5 guys have a chance.
Well, no, Jody Frey. I meant to carry all 5.
Oh, they're not carrying 5. They're not carrying 5. But the advantage Kenny Gainwell and Trey Sermon have, and Trey's the long shot, is they have them under control for a little bit longer than Swift. Swift's in a contract year. Penny's obviously on a 1-year deal. So
isn't Boston the highest paid back on the team?
I believe he is. I'd have to double check that, but I believe he is.
How do you walk into that room and say, "Hey guys, I'm the highest paid back in this room,"
and he's on a 1-year prove it deal as well.
You keep that under wraps is what you do. You get on your phone, you check your banking account, but you don't mention that in the actual room itself.
Well, none of them make any money. That's the point. Now, Kenny and Trey.
Somebody's got to be the highest paid. Gill's right.
Yeah.
It's Boston Scott.
Kenny and Trey are still on their rookie deals, which is the whole point. They have extra time. And now, as Miles has proven, look, 1269, right? I guess it's potentially if Rashad Penny's en route to that type of season, would he sign a team-friendly deal? I mean, I wouldn't. But we know what the running back market is. DeAndre Swift, if he's having that type of year, to me, the clearest path to Swift and Penny being one and done in Philadelphia is them playing tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
The only way they're coming back is if they're okay, and the Eagles can get them on another 1 year.
Yeah, and this is going to be interesting.
Deal.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens this next offseason. Now that all the agents and the Players Association have this full calendar year to kind of look back at the running back situation, since it was such a topic. But people have to keep in mind, when they sign these collective bargaining agreements, how many running backs are in the league? They have 2,000 people in the league. They're not making decisions based on 90 of them.
That's one of the most absurd stories. Interior offensive linemen were underpaid for years. Nobody gave up, because nobody cares about. I mean, it's supply and demand. People don't want to pay for running backs.
Right.
You can't force them. Can't force them to pay for
That's
running
the biggest
backs.
issue with the running back. You wonder, though, if they would fight for, if you're the running backs, you can't franchise them, or that if you do franchise them, the number will be significantly different than what it currently is.
Then you got to, as you mentioned, Mike, then you got to open up to CBA. And why would they open up to CBA? I mean, for such a small group.
But there's one thing. The CBA will be reopened. I can guarantee you that. But will the union go to bat for that smaller group in the face of the entire larger group that it is? 18th game. The NFL wants to get that 18th regular season game in. If it's not next year, it's going to be the year after. They want to get to it as soon as possible, knock off another preseason game, and get that 18th regular season game. And when they do, the running backs just have to petition their union and go, you got to take care of it.
I'll say this then, guys. Why would the union, forget about the league, why would the union do that? Because the minute you do that, who's next? Who's next? The linebackers? They're going to say, what about us? What about off-ball linebackers? What about interior offensive line? What about fullbacks? What about everybody's going to be in line. Why are you helping? Why are you singling out these?
You're a running back hater, man. You are just a hater.
No, I meant from the union's perspective, it's not even tenable. So people say, well, the league doesn't care about running backs.
So what they get instead, John? Less practice time. Because every time the union negotiates, that's the only thing they win. It's less practice.
Well, I agree.
They never
with
get
that.
more money. They never stand up for a group. I'd say actually stand up for a group rather than go, green practices will only be 80 minutes rather than 90 minutes.
Well, I agree.
To me, that's all they win when they negotiate with the owners.
Well, I agree that they need to stand up for a group. That group needs to be the players as a whole financially. They don't. That is what's called a Pandora's box. If you start singling out, we're going to fight for running backs, but we're not going to fight for insert this. And obviously,
well, it's a very difficult situation because of the nature of, okay, you're a sport and you're trying to also, I guess the NFL doesn't care as much about promoting their own. It's not the NBA where they're trying to promote, but the running backs are some of the most recognizable players that they have in their league. Hey, name me a couple of NFL players. Well, Saquon Barkley and Travis, Henry and Zeke Elliott. And like, people know who these guys are right off the bat. Even Elliott, a guy who's a little bit past his prime now, is probably one of the more recognizable players in your entire league, which makes it different from an off-ball inside or an inside linebacker or an interior lineman. Not that that means you should get paid more money necessarily, but a lot of times if you are someone who has a big following and has a big reach, that does garner you more pay.
Yeah, well, yeah. To me, it's a simple supply and demand issue. And Lloyd Howell is the new executive director of the NFLPA. Boy, you're putting him in a difficult spot if you're saying, hey, go fight for running backs, but nobody else. I mean, I think it's an absurd discussion. I really do, from the perspective of people. And there's been a lot of media people who said, you got to do something about the running backs. It doesn't. It just makes no sense from a logical standpoint.
And by the way, I agree with you. I'm just, looking at the other side of it, answering the question that was thrown our way about the running backs. They're not getting paid, and it just kind of snowballed down this direction. But I also agree that
real quick, you want to get running backs paid, play football like it used to be paid, and they will get paid. And they will get paid extensively and handsomely, and amongst the most, what you were talking about, Mike, most high-profile players in football, like they used to be.
Right.
Play football the way it used to be played.
You asked somebody to name football players. I said Zeke Elliott. He's not even on a roster. But most people, you're my age group. What are they going to say? Emmitt Smith. They're going to give you Eddie George. They're going to give you guys. The running backs were the most recognizable players of an entire multiple eras. And even in an era where the running back has been quote unquote devalued, there's still some of the most recognizable players in the league.
Well, then go back to college and get some NIL money. That's what I'll say.
If you ask a good football fan, but not a diehard football fan, name the top three off-ball linebackers in the NFL. You'd be lucky if you come up with two names. They would forget about the top three. They might not be able to give you two. So, Mike, I think you're right. The name cachet might be enough for the union to actually put them at their top of the must-help-out list if there is an opening to the collective bargaining agreement. Gill, we kept you way over. Thank you very much. Be tuned next week to see if he's running out of Ivy League schools. He's already put a bunch of the t-shirts on from the Ivy League.
What have we got?
I want to see a C and a C at the end of that jersey next week. Community college. There's a whole bunch of them out there. Don't care which one, but give me a CC next week. All right.
I think Cornell's got to be disrespected. I think we have.
I've never been to Cornell. Never been there. I am taking a trip. At the end of August, I might have a couple new ones for you.
Very nice. All right. Nice. Mike Gill, thank you very much. Stay off the beach.
See you guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Mike Gill here with us on Birds 365.
Who else? Have we gotten Dartmouth? I'm trying to think of the Ivy League schools now.
He's clicked off a couple. I forget which ones, but
Columbia, I think we got a Columbia.
Mike Gill actually attending any of those schools, not happening. Kind of like you and me. We visit. We buy a T-shirt. That's all I got was a stinking T-shirt. That's the only way we.
I've been on Penn's campus many times, so I don't think that makes me Ivy League.
No, that doesn't quite get you to Ivy League status. Walking through the campus and heading off down the street to the Palestra. That doesn't count as attending an Ivy League school. All right, Jody Mac coming back. Quick segment, and then we'll get Andrew DeCecco. I always want to say DeCicco. I know I got a buddy named DeCicco. And Andrew DeCecco is going to join us coming up in less than 15 minutes here on Birds 365.